The radical. Fundamental principles of freedom, rational self-interest, and individual rights. This is the Yaron Brook Show.
All right, everybody, welcome to Yaron Brook Show on this Wednesday, March 12th. I hope everybody is having a fantastic week. We keep on chugging along here and trying to keep up with the insanity that is the world around us, particularly the world of news, the world of Trump's world. These days, Trump's world. It's Jennifer's birthday. Happy birthday, Jennifer. All right. Happy birthday. That's great. That's great. Start off with some good news. That's always good. We are going to be discussing the ongoing, never boring trade war that Donald Trump has gotten us into. We'll talk about Google and the Trump administration's approach to Google. I've got a cool video to show you about manufacturing. I want to show you this video because this video will really make real, I think, in ways that I don't think you can. Well, that's the sound of the video. I don't want any sound. We'll mute it. Anyway, I've got this video to show you that I think is what it means to say we're bringing the jobs back. Manufacturing jobs. We're bringing the jobs back. So I'll show you a video of what that looks like, what those jobs look like. Department of Education. We'll talk about Department of Education. It looks like Trump is serious about closing it. You know, one of the things that he will do that's good is close Department of Education. Will he get rid of all the things that Department of Education does? That I don't think he will. That is where I think it's more window dressing than anything else. Greenland voted. They had an election. So we know whether they want to become a state in the United States or not. We've got an election. We'll talk about the EPS, Environmental Protection Agency. Ooh, it's not EPS, it's EPA. Typo in my title. So apologize for that. It's the EPA. EPA, one of those areas within the Trump world where good stuff is going to happen. So we'll talk about one good thing that they are in the process of doing. The following kind of the process, rule of law, and they're doing something good. EPA shouldn't exist, but getting rid of it would be hard. But within what is possible, they're doing something good. So we should acknowledge that. We'll talk about rockets. New rocket company. I'd never heard of it. It's not new, but I'd never heard of it. And it's just gained a new big time CEO. So that is great. And then we'll end on the uplifting positive note of anti-Semitism and the growth of anti-Semitism and its ugly appearance in the world around us. So we'll talk about that. All right, Silvanos, thank you for starting us off with a sticker. That is greatly appreciated. Reminder to all of you: ask questions. Lots of questions. So the more questions you ask, the longer we'll go. If you want a long show, ask lots of questions. If you want a short show, ask a few questions. Ask them with lots of dollars. That's always good because that helps the show. It helps us grow. It helps us invest. And again, the show exists because of listeners like you. Couldn't exist otherwise. I mean, there were a lot of topics today, and narrowed it down to these. There's so much we can talk about. There's so many different crazy things going on right now in the world. But this is what we'll focus on for now. So today was the kickoff of the latest round in the trade war. Actually, went through 3 rounds. Today went into effect the steel and aluminum tariffs that the Trump administration placed on importation from everywhere in the world. And people were expecting exemptions, exceptions, carve-outs, favors to different countries, like the first term, what he did in his in 2018 or 2019 when he placed steel tariffs back then. No such exemptions or carve-out showed up. Flat-out tariff, 25% across the board on all importation of steel, doesn't matter from whom. Largest imports of steel come from Canada, number 1, Mexico, number 2, Brazil, number 3, European Union. So our allies, China is in the top 5, but it's like 5th or 4th or 5th. So not a lot of steel coming in from China. So national security reason for the steel tariffs. Yeah, scratch your head. Try to find one. We don't trust our allies. And if there's a war tomorrow, we need a lot of steel. We don't trust them to make it for us. So we want to make it very, very expensive to import steel so that more steel production gets built in the United States. Talk about an inefficient allocation of capital and labor. People can make steel in friendly countries to us cheaper than we can. We can buy it and make the tanks and whatever we need to do in order to make it. But no, we're going to build, we're going to make more expensive steel here and less efficient, less effective, less productive, lower quality steel here in the United States to build those same things that are just going to cost more and drain our economy of resources. It makes no sense. Anyway, that is what happened, though. Makes sense, not sense. Aluminum, like almost all the aluminum we import from a number 1 enemy these days, Canada. And we're worried that if World War III breaks out, we can't get enough aluminum because the Canadians hate us. Well, they sure hate us now. Anyway, we were importing cheap aluminum from Canada. It's anybody using aluminum out there, any manufacturers of aluminum out there, it costs 25% more today. And all that's going to happen is American manufacturers are going to raise their price. Now, maybe somebody is going to come in and invest billions and billions of dollars to build aluminum processing plants in the United States. I don't know where they're going to get their electricity from. Heavy electricity burden for aluminum. And why would anybody do it when in in a month, Trump could change his mind? In 4 years, another president could reverse the tariffs. It takes these are long-term investments. They're the kind of investments you don't make unless you kind of guarantee, unless you really have a good sense of what the future lies. And who are the workers who are going to work in this factory? Immigration is probably going to decline over the next 4 or 5 years. Where are you going to find the workers to work? These are not H-1B guys. These are not the kind of people that Elon Musk wants to bring into the country. This is the kind of hard, difficult, dirty labor that you need. Well, maybe not. Maybe it's all robots. I don't know. I actually don't know what the aluminum factories look like in Canada. But I do know we don't have people, so better be robots. Anyway, it's just nobody's going to make that investment. It would be crazy to do so. Yeah. So we've got all those tariffs went into place. Anyway, the EU today, the European Union, announced that, and I said this before, that since we're shooting ourselves in the knees, they're going to shoot themselves in the knees too, and they are going to raise tariffs on American goods, all kinds of goods, particularly. Just like the Chinese, they're looking for goods and the Canadians are looking for goods that hurt red states, states that vote for Trump, so that they get to suffer the consequences of their own actions. I'm all for that. That's great. So they are increasing tariffs on American goods. Our Hall says aluminum smelters are hot, dirty, and dangerous. That's what I figured. And not a lot of people want to work in those smelters. And I'm not sure where you get that. Anyway, the employees to work in those kind of places. So Europe has increased tariffs in the United States. President Trump heard about that today. He got very angry. How dare the Europeans raise tariffs in the United States? Just because the United States raised tariffs on them. And he has promised to raise tariffs even more on the Europeans. This is what people talk about when they talk about a trade war. I raise tariffs, you raise tariffs, I double up on my tariffs, you double up on yours. Third parties start raising tariffs, we raise tariffs on them. And then soon enough, we're in a spiral to the bottom. I haven't just shot myself in the knees, I'm shooting myself in the hip, I'm stomach, and finally, I just put a bullet through my brain and end it. This is economic suicide. It's stupid. The UK, which also exports steel to the US, is not raising tariffs on the US. Not because they're smart, not because they understand the tariffs are bad and you shouldn't increase tariffs on yourself in order to hurt somebody else. Tariffs, as I said, are lose-lose. That means you lose too. Generally in life, general principle in life, take notes, everybody. Your general principle in life, avoid lose-lose transactions. If America puts tariffs on, it loses, and yes, you lose if you're Europe or if you're the UK. Why would you want to add to your losses by putting more tariffs on? The best thing to do if America raises tariffs is go, you people are stupid, and just keep on chugging along. Maybe even reduce tariffs with the US and the rest of the world. Best response to another country raising tariffs is to do nothing. The best response to stupidity is not to become stupid. The best response to lose-lose is not to add more lose-lose. So the UK is not raising tariffs because they think that they are on the verge of signing a free trade deal with Donald Trump. Trump, when Starmer was here, promised that such a deal was in the works. And I think the Brits really believe that, and they think it's happening. I am skeptical. And even if they sign such a deal, I mean, the U.S. had such a deal with Canada and Mexico. What is the value of it ultimately? If the United States can just ignore it and place tariffs on you anyway, which is what they did with Canada and Mexico. Had a free trade deal, and then found some crazy excuse to ignore it completely. The extra 25% of Canadian steel, that was rescinded yesterday. I think I mentioned it yesterday, because the extra 25% on American electricity was rescinded. And now Connie, the new incoming Prime Minister of Canada, is going to meet with Trump and then negotiate, I don't know, fentanyl. I don't know what they negotiate, but then negotiate something to Canada wants to negotiate because they think maybe they can get a better deal from Trump. That's where we are. Tariffs, trade being disrupted. China's already placed tariffs in the United States. Canada's already placed tariffs in the United States. EU has just placed tariffs in the United States. The UK hasn't yet. I don't know if Brazil is going to do anything in retaliation, or Japan or other countries. We'll see. We'll see what happens. But basically, this is hampering long-term planning. It's hampering investment. It's incredibly destructive. It's unequivocally Trump's fault. There's no grand strategy here. There's no 3D, 4D, 5D, or any kind of chess. There's no checkers even. This is just Trump lashing out based on his ignorance of economics and his emotional resentment of trade deficits and his belief, detached from all facts of reality, that somehow we are subsidizing the rest of the world by running a trade deficit with it. Anyway, we will see what happens. We will see what happens. The best thing, like the rest of the world could do, is sign free trade agreements between each other. Just circumvent the U.S. Like Brazil and the EU and the UK and Canada and China and Vietnam and I don't know, Mexico should all sign a free trade agreement lowering tariffs to zero across the whole everything and make the U.S. this island of tariffs, of reciprocal tariffs. And let's see how all that pans out. And we'll see how Trump economics works out in practice. Turn the United States into a second-rate power. All right. That is tariffs. Evolving story will continue because Trump won't let it go. That is, again, EU raised tariffs, Trump will raise tariffs. Oh, by the way, there's been this story going on. Trump has mentioned it. Others have mentioned it. I see it on Twitter all the time. God, those Canadians. They talk about tariffs and all that, talk about the evil of tariffs and everything, but they have these unbelievable tariffs on milk products. I mean, dairy duties from 250% to 300 and something percent. And this is the example everybody uses that Canada supposedly has unfair trade practices. But then if you actually look at these tariffs, they only kick in at a certain threshold of importation. So imports of dairy up until a certain level are basically tariffs at zero. And then only after the U.S. hits a certain level, which Trump negotiated, by the way, zero tariffs go away and suddenly these 250% kick in. But it turns out that level has almost never been hit. That is, right now, the United States sells milk products into Canada at zero tariffs. At zero tariffs. The reality is the trade between the United States and Canada has for decades been basically tariff-free for both countries. Both countries. Canada does not apply any tariffs on most U.S. goods. The U.S. Department of Agriculture points out that almost all U.S. agricultural exports to Canada face zero tariffs or quotas under the North American Free Trade Agreement, NAFTA, that took effect in 1994, and continue to face zero tariffs under the Trump-negotiated deal that went into effect, the modified NAFTA that went into effect in 2020. So it's all, I mean, that's the thing about this administration, the thing about Trump and the thing about his people, is that half the things that they tell you are just lies. They're just lies. They just make stuff up. Or they're just too ignorant to know that they're lying in some cases. All right. As you know, as I think you know, if you've been listening to Yaron Brook show consistently for the last few years, you know that the Biden administration went really hard against Google and actually sued Google for antitrust. It went to the court, and there was a trial, and the trial ruled, yes, the trial ruled that Google is a monopoly. And when asked what the remedy should be, the Biden administration asked a remedy that basically meant that Chrome, the browser, would be spun off from Google. Spun off from Google. And I'm sure many of you thought, oh, great, we've now got the Trump administration coming in, and they'll be better on antitrust because, hey, I mean, it can't get a lot worse than Nai Harn, who was in charge of antitrust enforcement under Biden. Lean account was really, really bad. And we know Trump is better than Biden. I mean, that's what I was told over and over and over again leading up to this election. Trump is better than, he might not be good, but he's better than Biden. He's yet to show that, by the way, but that's what I was told. So, yeah, you figure, okay, now that Trump is in charge of the Justice Department, Pam Bondi is AG, they will leave Google alone. In particular, if you think about Google and you think about, antitrust is bad law to begin with. It's non-objective law. It's evil. It's intent, and it basically penalizes success and penalizes size and penalizes it penalizes doing a good job. But right now, the Trump administration claims, I don't expect people to understand antitrust, the evil of antitrust, but we're told that we're in this competition with China and AI and defense, and we need best companies in the U.S. to be able to compete with China, and on and on and on, we're told. And, so let's break up Google. That'll be good. That'll go a long way to helping us, to helping the United States compete with China, not that, on defense or AI or anything like that. It's absurd. It's ridiculous. But as we know, antitrust is wrong. It is, and if you have any questions on antitrust monopolies, please ask in the super chat. But I've articulated many times, including in some Capitalism 101 classes, Capitalism 101 sessions we've done in the Yaron Brook show, that antitrust is just one of the most evil policies the U.S. government has. We thought it would be a little less evil under Trump, but it's not. I, for example, was not surprised by this because I know that J.D. Vance, for example, is a huge fan of Lena Khan's, and that the person that Trump has placed in her place at the FCC is just as adamant about breaking up big tech as she was, and indeed has kept all of her guidelines. All of the Biden administration strategy around antitrust has been preserved for, they tell us, continuity with the Biden administration. Anyway, yesterday, the Justice Department had an opportunity to present before the federal court to discuss what it demands in terms of penalty for Google for its anti-competitive practices. And it has basically said that it believes that Google should be broken up. In other words, that the Trump administration has basically said that it is on the same page as the Biden administration, that they support the Biden administration's recommendation in this, and that they are gung-ho about breaking Google up as being good policy. Good for America. America first. Remember, America first. Good for America if we broke Google up. As I said over and over again, when it comes to some of the most important policies that we face, there's very little difference between this administration and the Biden administration when it comes to actual policy. Right. Yeah, I want to show you this video. I'm excited to show you this video. So everybody's talking about bringing jobs back. In other words, bringing manufacturing back. Right? Everybody wants to build stuff in America. Build, because this will create jobs and high-paying jobs and high-quality jobs. It's great jobs. Amazing jobs. So bring manufacturing back. So I want to show you a short video. It's like 15 seconds long. I won't interrupt it, I promise. Of what a factory looks like today. This one is in China. This is what you're competing against. This is what you want to bring back to America. Jennifer says big muscles. Yeah, huge muscles. but not the kind that you expect. Not the kind of you expect. Well, maybe you do expect it. All right, here we go. I've turned off the music because the music's just annoying. What do you notice? What do you see? Or let me ask you this. What don't you see? What is not there? I mean, this is just on a loop, so you're seeing the same thing over and over again. But what isn't there? Human beings, jobs. It's all muscle, but it's all robot muscle. And you can even tell that there are literally no human beings in the entire factory. Because what's the other sign that there are no human beings there? How can you tell? What do human beings need that robots don't need? Light. The lights are off. There's no lighting. Robots don't need lighting. There are probably no bathrooms too, but there's no lighting. It's dark. And of course, you don't need heat. You don't need cooling. Maybe a little bit of cooling, I don't know. You don't need heat in the winter. And the other thing about these abused robots, and some of them might be even children, might be very young robots, is you can work them 24/7. No breaks, no bathroom breaks, no going to sleep. I mean, maybe maintenance once in a while, like they have to go to the doctor. But probably bring in another robot to replace. No unions, no strikes, nobody complaining, no raises. Unit cost probably goes down. Robots just get cheaper all the time. So whereas human beings, when they become more productive, they get more expensive. Robots, when they get more productive, they usually become cheaper. So, this is the future of manufacturing. And this is a beautiful future. The future of manufacturing is no human beings. The future of manufacturing is 100% robots run by an AI. And the reality is that almost all jobs of the future are going to be service jobs. Like somebody's going to say, but who makes the robots? Robots do. The future of work is in one form or another services. It's doing things that robots are not very good at, dealing with other human beings in one way or another. So I consider intellectual a service job. You're providing a service. So, all this nonsense about, and part of this is, so who cares where the robots are? What you really care about, in a sense, is can you afford the stuff you're buying from China? Yeah, we can. Look at how much importing we're doing. We can afford it. Why can we afford it? Because it turns out we produce something that generates huge amounts of wealth. What is that? Well, services. We design the robots. We design the chips. We design the software. That's what we're good at. And that's where the greatest value added is. So it's just so, I don't know, detached from reality is too nice of a term. It's this idea that somehow tariffs are going to bring manufacturing back. We're going to get great paying jobs. We're going to resurrect the middle class. No, just going to create work for robots. They'll have to do it here instead of the other part of the another side of the ocean. We're just raising our costs. We're just lowering our standard of living. That's all we're doing. And you're seeing this shift towards automation across entire industries. Xiaomi, which is a Chinese company that makes cell phones, has developed what they call an intelligent manufacturing platform. It's basically a factory that, like the one you saw in the picture, is a dark factory, no lights. It operates 24/7 without any human intervention. It manages everything. That is, the AI, the robots manage everything. From raw material procurement, they know exactly what the level of raw material is, and when they need more, they buy it, send out an email, move the money. They deliver the product, and they produce. This platform can produce one smartphone every 3 seconds. Now, I don't know if that's fast or not. It strikes me as fast. You know, that's where it's heading. And that is going to be true across the board. You know, there's a lot of interest, for a lot of reasons, a lot of interest in self-driving trucks. I mean, self-driving cars are one thing, but self-driving trucks are responsible for a lot of the real injuries and deaths in traffic accidents. Self-driving trucks could be a lot safer. Truck drivers are expensive. It's difficult work that gets paid a lot. You could put in, and of course they need to sleep. And if they don't sleep, they get into accidents. You can put self-driving trucks on the road, don't need to sleep, 24/7, don't need lights. I mean, they don't need to be entertained. And, I mean, think about that. What happens if truck stops, right? And you would save a boatload of money. And there are a lot of companies working on it. Most companies are putting trucks on roads and testing them that way and proving the concept by testing them on the road. Well, a Canadian company, Canadian. I don't know if I'm supposed to talk positively about Canadian companies. It might be considered treasonous in these days to talk about anything Canadian in a positive way. But anyway, this, you know, since when do I follow rules? This is a Canadian robo-truck startup called Waabi, W-A-A-B-I, that has put together a super realistic virtual simulation, which they claim now is accurate enough to prove the safety of a driverless big rig without ever putting it on the road. Without ever putting it on the road. So it uses digital, it has massive amounts of sensor data, it compares the trucks in the simulator with the trucks on real roads. And supposedly they've created this thing that is an amazing simulation, again, to speed up delivery, speed up the availability of technology for driverless trucks for the road. Soon you'll be able to see trucks driving around, no drivers. It's coming within the next few years. It seems like more effort is going into that than is effort going into driverless cars for consumers, because the benefit is immediate on the trucks. The cost saving is immediate on the trucks. The challenge there is going to be to get the regulations across different states to align so that a driverless truck is okay in Texas but not okay in New Mexico. That would not work. So you need to get the ability to drive all the way from Texas to California with the same truck, same driverless truck, without different regulations in each state applying to it. So, but that is where we're heading. That is where we are heading. All right, beautiful future manufacturing. It's inspiring to see, and good things are happening. All right, Department of Education. Trump has said he's going to abolish the Department of Education, and it does seem like what Trump has said during the campaign, he takes seriously and he wants to live up to, he wants to do. You know, he said he was going to do tariffs. He's doing tariffs. He said he would, cozy up to Russia and get a deal between Russia and Ukraine and force that deal down Ukraine's throat. That's exactly what he's doing. We did notice yesterday that I think I mentioned this, that the United States is now delivering military aid to Ukraine again. The shipments from Poland into the Ukraine are starting up again. What do you call it? Intelligence is flowing again. And even private companies who stopped providing satellite information, private satellite information, to Ukraine at the request of the U.S. government, have started providing the information again to Ukraine. You know, Ukraine, hard to tell, Ukraine has taken some significant losses on the ground in the last couple of days, particularly in the Kursk, in the area that they took inside Russia. Hard to tell how much of that is related to this blindness that no intelligence. So it could be that all of this was just a charade to allow Russia to gain an advantage in their effort to regain control of Kursk by blinding the Ukrainians, and the Trump administration helped them get that done. I hope that's not the case, but it certainly could be. Anyway, Department of Education, Trump is committed to shutting it down, and I think he will. And today, they announced that they were firing basically half the people that work at the department, about 4,100 people. You know, it's part of reducing the federal workforce, but I think more importantly in this case, it's part of disbanding the entire Department of Education. Now, disbanding the Department of Education probably requires an act of Congress, but what they can do is just empty it out of all content. Now, you know, Linda McMahon, who's the CEO of World Wrestling Federation or something like that, she is the education secretary, very, very qualified. But maybe at shutting stuff down, she's very qualified. Maybe she is committed to shutting it down, which I think is great. I'm all for shutting down most of the government agencies and departments. I mean, more than most, probably 75% of them at least. Here's the problem, though, that we're not actually shutting down the Department of Education. We're just reshuffling its responsibilities. Like, none of the laws that say the federal government must do X, Y, Z vis-a-vis education have been repealed. If the Department of Education doesn't do them, then somebody else in government will have to do it. Maybe they'll shift them to other departments, but it doesn't matter. The things that are supposed to be done by legislation will be done. I don't know, standardized testing, No Child Left Behind. Those are pieces of legislation mandated by Congress. So by shutting down the Department of Education, again, all for it, great, fire a bunch of people, somebody's still going to follow through with all those things. Otherwise, the executive branch is not following the law. One of the biggest things the Department of Education does is it grants student loans, and it does all the scholarships and all the grants. Is the government going to stop doing student loans? I mean, that would be amazing. That would be the single best thing you could do to lower tuition. Force parents and students to go to banks and get loans where you're supposed to get a loan, from the bank, not from the government. And then the bank will say, what are you going to major in? And the kid goes, oh, gender studies, I'm super excited. And the bank will go, yeah, but you'll never be able to pay back the loan because you'll never get a job with that degree. No, I'm not giving you a loan. I mean, imagine if banks started determining what majors get loans and what don't. That would rationalize our educational system quite well. But that's not on the agenda, as far as I know. I'm all for 100%. No more student loans from the government. The government is not a lending agency. It's not a bank. How about, this will be radical, how about no more scholarships? None. Not for poor kids, not for veterans' kids, not for any kids. U.S. government does not do education. Now, that would be meaningful. But what is going to happen is they're going to move student loans to Treasury. They're going to move the scholarship stuff to Treasury or somebody, or they'll create a new department or something. And scholarships will have to be privatized, just like a lot of other things. As the government gets out of the way, will have to be privatized. And loans will have to be private. By the way, it's only recently that student loans have been completely nationalized, and that is under the Obama administration. What did the government take over all student loans? Before that, they did some, they did a little bit, but banks did most of them. They went all in with Obama. Well, it's time to go all out. Now, that would be interesting. That would be important. That would change the dynamics of government and you know, the relationship with the private sector. And leave the private sector free and leave our educational institutions free. And education institutions would get a lot less money from the government. That would give them more freedom. So it just would be huge if the government stopped giving student loans. I mean, but you'd also have to, you know, to get the government out of education, you have to repeal, was it Title IX of the Civil Rights Act that says you can't discriminate. And you remember that was applied to sports, and the universities have to invest as much in women's sports as in men's sports, and all of that kind of stuff. All of that should be gone. Government should have no say in how universities are run and what they do and how they function. And to do that, you have to get rid of all these pieces of legislation. I know you don't like that word. I know this administration doesn't like that word. Legislation. And then, yeah, do away with the Department of Education. Zero it out. It would have been so much easier to do under Reagan, because Department of Education was brand new then. It had just been created under Jimmy Carter, and it didn't have that many employees, wasn't doing that many things yet, certainly wasn't doing student loans. And Reagan promised to abolish the Department of Education, but he put in charge William Bennett, who was this staunch conservative and anti-education as it was being done back then. And Bennett grew the Department of Education instead of eliminating it. By the time he was done, the Department of Education was bigger. Mansa says, that sounds a bit extreme, Dr. Brook. Yes, it is. I'm an extremist, if you haven't noticed. Very extreme. I am very, very, very extreme. I am for shrinking government to only protecting individual rights. Get them out of education. And by the way, I'm for doing that at the state and local level as well. So privatize all education. Quickly, immediately, as fast as possible. Anyway, so we should all celebrate the Department of Education closing. It's great. Again, it's not happening yet. The functions of the Department of Education are not closing, and that we should not be happy about. And generally, look at the details. Don't look at the rhetoric. Don't look at the hype. Don't look at the BS. Don't look at the DOGE website that says that they've cut $105 billion, because they haven't. At best, you could argue they've had a $29.9 billion impact, but even that's not accurate. The accurate number is probably closer to $9 billion. There's actually now a website that tracks DOGE's claim, what it's actually done, and then the net effect on government spending. And right now it's $8.6 billion. As I told you before, February spending was higher than January and higher than last February. And the House just passed a budget that is basically a continuation of Biden's budget. So nothing has changed in terms of government spending. Nothing. DOGE can make a lot of noise. They can claim, they can argue, but they haven't done anything. Zero, zilch, nada, because Congress has the power of the purse, and Congress has not changed anything. So anyway, all right. And now it's going to be interesting. I'll just mention this. It's not wasn't going to talk about it too much. But, the House passed the continuing resolution with Biden's budget, continuing government spending the way it was before. It passed it. Republicans voted for it, except for Massey, who voted against, and Democrats voted against it. Now it's gone to the Senate, where they need 60 votes. Rand Paul will vote against the continuing resolutions. They said Republicans need 8 Democrats to vote for the continued resolution. But I don't think the Democrats want to do that. And then the question is, Democrats are afraid that they'll get blamed for shutting down the government. Government gets shut down, I think, next week if they don't vote. Or do they think Trump will get blamed for it? And so they're playing kind of chicken with the Trump administration right now. The Democrats want to vote on a 30-day government funding bill, a continued resolution, not a 6-month continued resolution. And now it's just chicken. Who will blink first and who will get blamed for the government shutting down? Who expects will get blamed? But I think there's a good chance at this point that the government does get shut down. We'll see. All right. Greenland voted yesterday. It's a small country, 52,000 people, I think, and they voted. They have a parliamentary system, and they voted in the election. The current government did not do particularly well. Indeed, it was a surprise. The result was a surprise. The political party that won are the Democratic Party. I probably mispronounced that because it's in Greenlandish, which is, I guess, Danish with an accent, Greenland accent, which I don't know what that is. Anyway, this Democratic Party, we'll call them, secured 29.9% of the vote. And they were ahead of another opposition party, which is the Naleraq, I don't know if that's right, party, which is 24.5. What's interesting about the vote is the Democratic Party that won the 29.9, won the most votes, is a pro-independence Greenland party, but believes in gradually moving towards independence. So it favors a slow approach to independence from Denmark versus the party that came in second place, the Naleraq party, or something like that, actually believes in quick, rapid independence from Denmark. Neither of these political parties are particularly favorable towards becoming a state of the United States, although they will get 2 senators, even though they only have 52,000 people. They should reconsider 2 senators. That's a lot of money could go into Greenland because of those 2 senators, in spite of their small population. But anyway, neither party is inclined towards selling Greenland to the United States. That, of course, was not on the ballot, but neither of these parties are inclined to do that. They are both pro-independence. This party, the Democratic Party, does want good relations with the United States, would like to have more alliance with the United States, would love to get the United States to invest, but there really isn't, there's no majority in Greenland for the United States taking over Greenland. So we're going to see, what exactly comes of all this. They still have to form a government, coalition, all of that. Who knows? Who knows? But yes, Greenland did not vote yesterday to embrace Trump as their new leader, supreme leader. I'm sure Trump is crushed, very disappointed. Okay, some good news. Good news out of the Environmental Protection Agency. It says in the title EPS, but what I mean is EPA, Environmental Protection Agency. So one of the worst things the Environmental Protection Agency, one of the worst things in recent years was during the Obama administration, the EPA put together something called the endangerment finding. And basically, the endangerment finding was a finding that fossil fuels and what fossil fuel emits are endangering basically human health and welfare because of climate change. So the idea is that really fossil fuel are pollutant and should be, it should fall under the authority of the EPA to regulate the products, the stuff that is pollutes that comes from fossil fuels. This has caused the Biden administration to pass bans on gas cars starting in a certain year. This has led the EPA to shut down power plants, slow U.S. drilling, shut down, LNG platforms. All of this was done under this endangerment finding. Well, the EPA today announced, this is Administrator Zeldin, and he's one of the better people that Trump has nominated. Basically, the EPA announced today that after 16 years, I'm quoting you, EPA will formally reconsider going through the process. There's a bureaucratic process to getting rid of stuff. After 16 years, EPA will formally reconsider the endangerment finding. The Trump administration will not sacrifice national prosperity, energy security, and the freedom of our people for an agenda that throttles our industries, our mobility, and our consumer choice, while benefiting adversaries overseas. Notice how everything now, when they do something good, is framed in terms of our adversaries overseas, as if the individual rights of Americans is not enough, right? Freedoms of our people is not enough. That should be it. That's all you need. We will follow the science, the law, and common sense wherever it leads, and we will do so while advancing our commitment towards helping to deliver cleaner, healthier, and safer air, land, and water. And this is from Administrator Zeldin, and this is what they're going through. Alex Epstein on his Substack has a piece on this. Again, encourage you to subscribe to alexepstein.substack.com. He is a sponsor of this show, and he breaks it down. Why is this good? What is the benefits of fossil fuel? Fossil fuel is never endangering anybody. Indeed, quite the opposite. Fossil fuels enhance human life. They don't endanger human life. And he gives you all the concretes and all of this, all of it spelled out in talking points that you can easily hold and communicate and use. And he also gives you lots of examples here in this Substack of all the ways in which the endangerment finding has been used by the Obama administration, the Biden administration, to basically throttle economic growth in the United States, to really do harm to the development of fossil fuels. So, the EPA is going to be now attacked constantly by Congress, by environmentalist groups, by all kinds of elements that are dedicated to stopping fossil fuels as an energy source. In other words, stopping industrialized society. And he's going to be attacked. And of course, they should be praised. They're taking on maybe the most destructive regulatory action in modern American history. And these are the kind of steps Trump should be taking. And here's the thing about Trump. I was thinking about this today. At the margins, at the periphery of his administration, where he has put good people in, but not in places where he has a great passion or great interest or has staked out and a particularly, aggressive position. That's where the good stuff will happen. Now, he has staked out a position, drill, baby, drill, and that's good. But he hasn't given out any of the details, and he hasn't really talked a lot about environmentalism and climate change and so on. But he's appointed good people to Energy, Interior, EPA, and they're going to do good work in kind of the shadows. Where Trump is going to do real damage, where Trump is going to be destructive, is where he is most passionate, where he cares the most, where he feels like his stature is at stake the most. He cares about trade. He cares about tariffs. Again, this is an issue that he's been talking about since the 1980s. We should take him seriously. And that's where his ignorance, his bully mentality, his lack of understanding of economics, his perceptual level mentality will come through in his actions. And that's why trade policy is going to be a disaster. It's the same thing with foreign policy. He cares about foreign policy because he wants to be a world leader up there on stage, and he wants to be able to ride horses shirtless with Vladimir Putin. He cares. That's where bad stuff will happen, because he doesn't understand the world. He does not understand foreign relations. He does not have a clue who our allies are, who our enemies are. And indeed, in these areas of foreign policy, for the most part, just like with trade, he has appointed really, really bad people to advise him. And as a consequence, he'll betray Europe. He betrays Ukraine. I wouldn't be surprised at all if he betrays Israel. He'll betray Taiwan, South Korea, Japan. And where his, again, love of dictators and his bully mentality will shine through. So in different areas, different things will happen. In the areas where he's relatively hands-off and he's appointed good people, those will be fine. Oh, the other part, which will be awful, is justice. Justice is going to be horrific. Justice Department is going to be horrific in its actions, because all Trump cares about there is retribution. He doesn't care about justice. Now, luckily, Trump doesn't care that much about the details of environmentalism or regulations of business and a lot of other things. And that's where there are real opportunities for positive change, where he's not focused. Anything he's actually focused on, because he's not smart and because he has a awful view of the world, only bad things will happen. All right, rockets. So this is a kind of a cool story, or an interesting story, I think. Nothing really big is happening, but there is this company that I didn't know existed called Relativity Space. It's a rocket startup. It's already raised, I think, $4 billion. It's designed some rockets. It is positioning itself to be a competitor to SpaceX, but of course it's still way behind. Its dream was to ultimately build its rockets 100% with 3D printers and with the use of automated robots and artificial intelligence, and thus be able to build rockets that are far cheaper, that are much cheaper than SpaceX's. It hasn't really been successful yet at doing that, and it looks like it's backing out of building rockets with 3D printing technology. It's raised a lot of money from BlackRock and Fidelity and Mark Cuban and others. But what is newsworthy, I guess, is the fact that Eric Schmidt was the adult that was brought in to be the CEO of Google in Google's relatively early days. And Schmidt basically took a relatively small startup competing with other search engines and turned it into the Google we know today, into the dominant player that it is today. He left the CEO position, I think, in 2011. He had taken the job to a CEO from Larry Page, who had been the CEO, was the founder, and Sergey Brin, who was the other founder. And then when he left, Larry Page, now older, wiser, more experienced, became CEO again. Eric Schmidt is a big name in tech. He is a big name. He hasn't been a CEO of a company since he left Google, but he has been an investor. He's been very involved in helping the Defense Department with bringing in new technology into the Defense Department. He's done a lot of different things. He's very, very highly regarded, very smart, very able. And now he has made a big investment into relativity space and becoming its CEO, replacing the founder of relativity in the process. So it's going to be interesting. Relativity Space already has $3 billion in future launch contracts with customers. And in spite of the fact that its first rocket, which was called Terran 1, failed, it is building bigger and bigger rockets, again, with the hope of competing with SpaceX. And it also has ambitions with regard to Mars, and ultimately building a manufacturing hub on Mars that'll use AI and 3D printers. What's interesting about this is the competition, the Eric Schmidt angle, the fact that he's joining. The article about this also kind of described all the different competitors now in the space. And, Blue Origin is developing a new rocket, New Glenn, which is a rocket, an orbital rocket. There's a company called there's a company called United Launch Alliance, which has a rocket called Vulcan, which is supposed to be debuted soon. There's Neutron by Rocket Lab, and then there's Firefly Aerospace. Firefly Aerospace we talked about last week, I think, because they just landed a spacecraft on the moon last week. Anyway, they have a medium launch vehicle that they're going to be debuting soon as well. So there is a massive competition to SpaceX. Nobody's anywhere close to being a successful SpaceX, but a lot of competition. Some of it is going to be kind of renewable rockets like SpaceX's, where they land back and it's all reusable, which is what Relativity wants to do. Others are going to be throwaway. One blast and it's done. It all depends on how cheap they can make the rockets. But it's going to be a fascinating space to watch over the next 5 years. I think by the end of this decade, we're going to have multiple companies launching rockets every day. It's going to just be an ongoing thing. This is also going to create competition for, SpaceX's internet service. And it's going to be competition to go to Mars, competition to go to the moon, competition to put satellites in space. We're going to have gazillion of satellites in space. It's not just the U.S. is doing this. Europeans are working. There's a number of startups over there. It's super exciting. We are, entering the golden age of rockets to space, which is pretty cool. Pretty cool. All right, finally, so there was a story today in the Free Press by Chris Rufo. Chris Rufo, of course, has become famous for his work on anti-woke and his really work on DEI. He's one of the people who've made it one of the most influential people in space in terms of anti-DEI and anti-woke. There's an article by him today on what's it called? He calls it the anti-Semitic influencer problem. I don't think it's particularly good, the article. It's kind of, it holds back. It's way too moderate and way too, I think, it's not expansive enough. But what it does is it points out a real problem and a real issue that is happening right before our eyes, and that I don't see many people commenting on. And that is the fact that influences that we all know about the anti-Semitism on the left that has come to the forefront over the last, really since October 7th, on American campuses. We've seen it being expressed by university professors, by students, large demonstrations all over the country, all kind of from the framework, from the leftist framework of oppressor oppressed. That's the framework they come under. And a lot of people have talked about this and the problems, and a lot of people be shaken up by it and really disturbed by it. But what is interesting is at the same time, we're seeing a dramatic rise in anti-Semitism among influences on the right. People like Kanye West, right? Although Kanye is a nutcase, I don't know how seriously one should really take him. But you know, in Christopher Rufo does. Candace Owen, Andrew Tate. What's shocking to me, though, is in Chris Rufo's article, is the two people he doesn't mention. He doesn't mention Tucker Carlson, and he doesn't mention Joe Rogan. What is happening right now is that anti-Semitism has become kind of cool on the right. Indeed, since Candace Owen became anti-Semitic, her ratings have gone up, her viewership has gone up, her subscribers have gone up. She's catering to certain desire by a certain segment on the right to get simple explanations for the craziness of the world around them. And what is the simplest explanation one can provide that has a long history of same? The Jews did it. Tucker Carlson has had a number of guests, one famous one, if you remember, who trying to normalize Hitler, trying to normalize Nazis. Remember the guy who claimed Churchill was the real problem? That same guy, by the way, is going on Joe Rogan. He's an explicit anti-Semite, and I know people are going to deny it, but anybody who normalizes Hitler is an anti-Semite. And this guy has posted some vile anti-Semitic statements. And yet here's Joe Rogan, the podcaster of all podcasters, bringing this guy on. Rogan doesn't need to do that. It's not necessary for his audience. He's super big. Candace Owen had Theos Vaughn on, another just ugly anti-Semitic character. And Stephen A. Smith, I don't know if you know Stephen A. Smith, he comments a lot on sports. He's a sports commentator. He defended Candace Owen. Again, Ian Carroll is going on Rogan. I mean, anti-Semitism is becoming mainstream on the right. And very few people seem to be noticing or caring. Joe Rogan hosted Daryl Cooper, the Nazi guy, anti-Churchill guy. This is insanity. So, no, Theo Vaughn is an anti-Semite. You can't excuse this stuff as ignorance. You can't excuse this stuff. What motivates the ignorance? Ignorance is something that can be easily dealt with. You can't excuse this as ignorance, and you can't excuse, let's say he's ignorant. Why is Candace having him on? Because she's interpreting it as anti-Semitism, and it's supporting her rabid anti-Semitism. You can't dismiss this stuff. This is what happens. This is exactly how it gets normalized. This is exactly how it becomes just part of the culture, how it gets accepted. Well, somebody like that the fact that he interviewed Trump doesn't make him less of an anti-Semite. It's his positions, it's his views that matter. And his ignorance again, Theo Von is interviewing Candace Owens. He's interviewing Candace Owens. Why would he interview Candace Owens? I got the reverse. I got Candace interviewing. Why is he interviewing Candace Owens? Why would you platform Candace Owens? Why would you give her a bigger reach, another microphone, another place to express her vile, disgusting views? He's part of the normalizing trend. Even if he's not an anti-Semitic, and I don't think Joe Rogan is an anti-Semitic, why are you allowing a platform for anti-Semites? But this is exactly how you normalize it. If Candace Owens has a big platform, and now I want to bask in a platform, so I'm going to invite her in, I'm expanding a platform, and I'm introducing my people to her ideas. And this is how anti-Semitism grows and grows and grows. So I think it's super scary. It's an example of the fact that the right in America today is stupid. Much of it is immoral, nasty, and the rest are amoral. And one of the things that people, I guess, are discovering is that anti-Semitism sells. It has ancient roots. It exists in many subcultures in the United States, left and right. It's deeply grounded, and it can resurface anytime, and it's certainly resurfacing on left, campus demonstrations, and on right, on the platforms of Joe Rogan and Theo Von, Tucker Carlson. Now, Tucker Carlson might be an anti-Semite, I don't know, but he certainly is exposing it to his vast audience and kind of triggering that wider context. One of my goals over the next year is I want to do a major talk on anti-Semitism. I want to do a big project. I've actually suggested to the Peterson Academy, I've asked if they would hire me to do a course, an 8-hour course on anti-Semitism, on its history, its philosophical roots, its religious roots, its, why it always surfaces, why it's so deeply ingrained, why Marx was an anti-Semite, all of that. Now, I don't know if they're going to let me do it, but that's one of my goals, is to really delve into this topic. I think it's interesting, and I think it's a great way to illustrate kind of the philosophical decay and decadence in the world in which we live, both, again, from the left, Marxist and woke perspective, and from this right, nationalist, religious, conservative, Christian perspective. So it might be true that Theo Von and Joe Rogan are not anti-Semites, but they're giving anti-Semites a platform. That's how the anti-Semites win. They get sanctioned by the most popular voices in the culture. These are crazy times, difficult times, scary times, and we need to call them out on it. I would boycott. If you're a subscriber to Theo Von, I would stop. I would stop listening to Joe Rogan. This is a time to take a stand. to stop sanctioning the sanctioners, to stop sanctioning those who would tolerate evil monsters like Candace Owen. So the only thing they understand is, a reduction in their listenership. So unsubscribe. Unsubscribe. It's the only weapon we have, right? Only weapon we have. That doesn't mean you shouldn't listen to people you disagree with, but there's this respectful disagreement, and then there's beneath contempt. Anti-Semites beneath contempt, not worth listening to. And the people who platform them should be boycotted. So boycott Theo Van. Of course, you should boycott Candace Owen and Tucker. You should never listen to those guys. They will literally destroy your brain. And you should boycott Rogan. You should boycott Rogan. All right. And I'm disappointed, Chris Rufo. It looked like it was going to be a really good essay. And it kind of was weak. Weak. I mean, here's this final paragraph. The problem of these big names seeing the traction of anti-Semitism, the problem has no easy answer, he writes. Certainly not digital censorship or criminalization of speech. I agree with that. The better approach involves patience. Push back on anti-Semitic narratives and build an establishment capable of both garnering attention and enforcing boundaries of decency. Anti-Semitic ideologies might be lucrative in the digital economy, but they are poison in the political realm. The right should reject them and their merchants, just as it rejected Sharpton, this is the anti-Semitism of the left, a generation ago. Yeah, I agree with all that. It just doesn't have the kind of, call to action. And the fact that he doesn't name Tucker, I think, says it all. He doesn't quite want to alienate some of the biggest platforms on the right because he is of the right. And if Tucker invited him tomorrow to an interview, he would go. But he shouldn't. Nobody should be interviewed by Tucker. You shouldn't go if he invites you. He has reached that level of indecency where you should boycott Tucker even if it increases your viewership. All right. I was just going to mention that we hadn't reached our first hour target, but then David and Wes came in and they've got us over the first hour target. So we're now into the second hour, but we still need about $200 to get to our second hour target. So please consider supporting the Yaron Brook Show with a super chat, or as Wes just did, with a sticker, $50. Thank you, Wes. Very, very, very much appreciated. Brian did a sticker, so did DRV. Thank you, guys. And who else did stickers? Yes, Mary Eileen. Thank you, Mary Eileen. And I think that might be it. Oh, Silvanos got us right started with $20 sticker right in the beginning. Please consider doing a sticker. 150 people watching right now. Step in with some support. It's a way to show value for value. And it's a way to support the show and keep the show going because we exist because of listeners like you. All right. I will remind you of a couple of things. One is I'm doing the seminar in London, England. Yes. On March 29th in the middle of London. We'll find a location in the middle of London. It's going to be on how to apply egoism to your life, basically. We're going to talk about relationships and career and any application that you want to bring onto the table. How to deal with issue with power relationships, how to deal with sex, love, all these issues, friendship. we'll talk about that. It's going to be a small group, relatively small, hopefully not too small, but relatively small, and a lot of interaction. 4 hours with me in a classroom in London. Should be fun. We can go out and get a drink afterwards. So if you're interested, it's £250. You can find information on how to register at yaronbrookshow.com. yaronbrookshow.com. Just scroll down to the section where I list events, and you will find it. You will find it listed down there. Prices will go up on Monday. They'll go up to $400. Right now, it's £250, which is about $320 something dollars. If you're at all interested, please go and subscribe. If you, for some reason, can't use the PayPal link, you can also, if you're a subscriber on Patreon, you can use Patreon to do it. And you can also use Eventbrite. But if you want the links to all that, if you haven't received an email from me and you need links, then just drop me an email, yaron@yaronbrookshow.com, and I will send you links to sign up for these events. It's not just for people who live in the UK. You can come in from all over the UK, Scotland. There's a train. You can come in and get out, often the same day for most of the UK. But you can come in from rest of Europe. You should come and hang out, spend a weekend in London. It'll be good. All right. Again, exact location forthcoming once I know exactly how many people are joining us. We've already got some registrations. I'm pretty sure the event will be happening. There was a kind of a minimum threshold. We're almost there. But it would be great if we got another 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 people signed up. That would get us to a better kind of level, a better kind of number. So if you're in the UK, do it. If you're in the US and you'd like to participate in something like this, send me an email and tell me where you are located geographically, and we will see as I travel, maybe I can start doing these seminars in different places around the country where there are concentrations of people who might be interested. So again, the easiest thing is to drop me an email, yaron@yaronbrookshow.com, expressing interest. You can also reach me, I guess, on Twitter and LinkedIn and places like that, and WhatsApp and stuff like that. But the easiest thing for me, so that I can keep track of it all, is to send me an email. Also, I should say, if you'd like to support the show on a regular basis, and you have the means to support the show on a regular basis, please do so. You're on Patreon. Just look up Yaron Brook Show on Patreon, patreon.com. If you have the means, a big chunk of the support, the big chunk of what makes this show possible are people who on Patreon or on PayPal do $100 or $250 or $500 a month. Those are levels that are popular, but levels that really make a difference. They really add up to significant amounts. I mean, I love everybody who goes 5 and 10 and 2, and please continue doing that. But to get to amounts of money that make the show possible, you have to have a significant number of people who do 100, 250, 500. If you're at 100 and you can do 250, please consider increasing. If you're 250 and could do 500, please consider. If you're at 10 and could do 100, please consider increasing. It makes a big difference in terms of the amount of funds available for dedicating to the Yaron Brook Show and to all of the stuff that we do. All right, let's jump in. Super chats. Let's see. We got a couple of $50, so let's start with those. James. Did you see Matt Walsh went full Nazi in his latest video critiquing Sam Seder? No, I didn't. Unapologetically explicit alt-right talking points. Just disgusting. I never took the left smears seriously that right is fundamentally racist, but maybe they're right. I haven't seen it, but it doesn't surprise me. I mean, Matt Walsh is, really dedicated to his religion. And he's dedicated to a certain vision of the, you know, of the past, of kind of a 50s white America, women in the house. I mean, his attitude towards women tells you everything you need to know. And, you know, that kind of attitude lends itself to kind of all these alt-right, you know, I don't know if it's Nazi, but certainly elements of xenophobia and elements of racism and sexism tied up with religion and nationalism. This is America, after all. And this is the kind of thing Leonard Peikoff warned us against in Ominous Parallels and in Dim Hypothesis, the book. And this is the kind of thing that I think we're heading towards, kind of a fascist, religious, Catholic. David says Catholics are anti-Semitic. Yeah, I mean, that's part of, well, I'll get to that in a second. I'll talk about that in a second. So it doesn't surprise me. Catholics are the original anti-Semites. They invented it. They really did. There was no such real concept as anti-Semitic, anti-Jewish before Christianity. I mean, the Romans hated the Jews because they kept rebelling against them. But they didn't hate them because they were Jewish. They didn't hate them more than they hated other tribes that rebelled against them. Christianity hates the Jews, implicit in its religious teaching. And the founders of the church, the fathers of the church, all had different, you know, levels of virulent forms of anti-Semitism. From kill them all to know we should tolerate them and make sure they suffer so that they're a reminder to what happens to people who reject Jesus. And while Catholics invented anti-Semitism, there were a lot of attempts by popes over the centuries to mitigate, to downgrade it, even during the Crusades, when the Crusades went ahead and killed a bunch of Jews kind of for practice. The popes tried to talk them out of it, not very successfully. But then, if you look at Martin Luther, the founder of Protestant religion, you will not find a more anti-Semitic person than Luther. Luther is unbelievably hateful towards the Jews. So it's not that it doesn't exist in Protestantism. It's that Protestantism matured during the Enlightenment, or period in the Enlightenment, which or during the Enlightenment, and moderated or eliminated those aspects of it. But at the birth of Protestantism, it was just as anti-Semitic as the Christians were, as the Catholics were. All right, David. Thank you, David. Another $50. I understand the danger of psychologizing others. However, what about those who are close to us? Can we successfully guess their mindset? I mean, yes, the danger is not just to attribute a psychological motive to people. But partially, it's by psychologizing it, you let them off the hook. Because sometimes people do things that are immoral. And you say, no, well, you know, they had a tough childhood or whatever. And that kind of eliminates the idea of a childhood. But look, the more you know somebody, the more you know about their psychology, the more it's not psychologizing, but it's, you know, facts about them. You know their behavior. You know what they are and who they are. And you take that into account in how you treat them. But I think the main thing is don't let people off the hook for moral, you know, for immorality in the name of, well, it's a psychology. And, you know, don't be open to what the facts really are rather than your interpretation of them. It's very easy to go down a path where you attribute a certain motivation to people, and you have to be alert to the idea that you could very well be wrong because you don't know what's going on inside of somebody else's head. So, while yes, of course, the closer you are to them, the more you know and the more you take into account their mindset. There's no question about that, as you should. You have facts that you're basing your assessment on. All right, Michael. It seems Trump thinks he is the Sopranos, and Putin is one of the heads of the five families. He needs to show respect to, while Zelensky and Trudeau are just underlings he doesn't have to take seriously. I think that's right. I think there's very much that. I think Trump definitely has that mentality. He is a kind of a mafioso, and there are other mafiosos out there: Putin, Xi, and Kim Jong Il in North Korea, and he must. Yeah, he has to deal with the other mafiosos, and he deals with them like because they're at the same level as he is, and everybody else is beneath him. Everybody else is like too weak. They don't have the cards. Remember, no cards. They're not holding any cards. Too really weak. And to that sense, yeah. As I think Greg said the other day, the whole way to understand Trump is as a mafia boss, as a bully, as an unthinking bully. And I think that's how you can understand Putin. I think Putin's more intellectual than Trump. Putin knows history. He has an agenda. He takes certain ideas more seriously. Trump has no ideas really that he takes seriously. He's completely empty. It's one of the shocking things about Trump is he's so non-ideological. I think Xi has certain strongly held beliefs that Trump does not. So they are different types of mafiosos, but he views them as mafiosos. They're less so. At least Xi, I think, is different than Putin, more intellectual. And Kim, the brutal dictator of North Korea, is again an empty vessel. Just a mafia boss, a family mafia boss. It's all in the family. So yeah, I agree with you, Michael. David, do you think Apple's promise to onshore $100 billion in new production capabilities is just posturing? Does it serve their purpose to make more stuff in the U.S.? I think it's mostly posturing. It could serve its purpose. I mean, they've tried to make stuff in the U.S. and have not been very successful. They got into trouble making stuff in the U.S. There were certain lines of Apple computers that they tried to make here, and it didn't work. Apple definitely has an incentive to move production out of China because it's worried because tariffs and trade restrictions and a potential war, they don't want to be exposed to that much political risk. So they want to diversify out of China. Whether some of that will come to the U.S., maybe as part of appeasing the government, maybe it makes sense of certain things. $100 billion seems like a lot. But again, appeasing Trump might be worth $100 billion. I don't know. But I think you have to view Apple as primarily wanting to get out of China. But it's very difficult to get out of China because China's really good at what they do. Really good. I just read an article, the struggles that Apple's having in India, trying to mimic what they do in China. And India just doesn't have the infrastructure. They don't have the supply chain. They don't have the subcontractors. They just don't have it. They don't have the infrastructure that China has. China has this down. Actually, Apple is more successful in Vietnam than they are in India. So I think it's mostly posturing. Some need for diversification. There might be, I'm not sure what they would build in the U.S. You'd have to think about what are high-margin products that could be built in the U.S., and I don't know what those would be. Maybe it's a future product that we don't even know about. Too bad Apple stopped making a car, although it never really made sense for Apple to build a car. But maybe something like that, something that's a high margin, high touch that they need to do in the U.S. But yeah, we'll see. I really don't know. David, how probable is it that the whole tariffs issue is due to Trump's desire to increase his leverage with U.S. businessmen so they all come crawling to him to beg for exemptions? I think there's definitely part of that. I think partially it's that. But I think that's just an add-on benefit. I think at the end of the day, this is something he deeply believes in. Again, it's one of the only things that he has been consistent on since the 1980s. There's some short circuit in his brain that prevents him from understanding the very simple, basic concept of trade, win-win. And it just is. Now, it is true that this gives it an advantage, but so far, maybe he's received a lot of money and a lot of accolades from the CEOs of steel industry. We talked about steel industry being one of the biggest lobbyists in Washington, and they certainly have a lot of influence in the Trump administration. But he hasn't yet given a lot of exemptions to a lot of other industries. The auto industry got a small exemption, but then pretty much everybody got the same exemption. We'll see how this develops, and that's something clearly to watch. Who gets exemptions? Which businessmen go kiss the ring? Did Apple get an exemption from the China tariffs? I don't know, and I haven't seen any articles about whether iPhone prices are going up by 25% because of the tariffs on China. But I need to look at that more closely and see maybe the tariffs were written in such a way that they don't affect goods coming, Apple's goods coming from China. David, are Jews like Ayn Rand's businessmen and a successful minority that is an easy target and backs down rather than escalates a conflict? Well, I mean, used to back down. I think Israel has changed that a little bit, not as much as I'd like, but a little bit. But yeah, it's a minority of successful people who are constantly harangued because they're successful, or one of the reasons is their success, and who don't generally stand up for themselves because they're used to being meek and defenseless. And also, on what grounds should they defend themselves? Defend their Jewishness? What is it that they're defending? What is it that they feel like they're being attacked on? Part of the issue for most Jews is, what does it even mean to be a Jew? What are they defending? Is it a religion that they're defending? Is it a nationality and ethnicity? Or what is it exactly? And how do we do that well, right? So it's not easy. But yes, it's definitely a minority that's getting pummeled and does not defend itself very well. Let's see. Vikram, do you like beach holidays? What's your favorite beach? Have you been to Thai beaches, Phuket perhaps? Just came from a fabulous holiday in Phuket. Highly recommend Nai Harn Beach in Phuket. I used to like beach holidays a lot. I've been to beaches in Hawaii and in Thailand, not to forget. I think my favorite there was in Koh Samui. It's an island off the coast of in the Thai Bay, I think it's called. Which had an amazing, it was the Four Seasons, and it had an amazing beach. It was just beautiful. And being to beaches in Costa Rica. Costa Rica has beautiful beaches. Actually, the beach we were at, Costa Rica, was not a beautiful beach. Too rocky, too many rocks and too many stingrays. And of course, I live in Puerto Rico. So there are plenty of beautiful beaches here. I've been to beaches in Australia. So now that I live in Puerto Rico and I have a beach 5-minute walk from my home, I'm less interested in beach vacations. Like, I live on the beach. This is my life. I have a view of the ocean from my front window. So my idea of a vacation is to go to, I don't know, Lisbon and hang out, or go to Barcelona or Paris, London, Milan, and go to museums and enjoy the food and enjoy the ambiance. So I have to admit that living on the beach makes me less interested in beach holidays. I'm much more interested in what I don't have in Puerto Rico, which is culture and really, really, really elevated experiences, cultural experiences. All right. Okay. A reminder, by the way, that if you're interested in events that I'm doing in the months to come, you can find a list of all the events, a calendar, dates and links to event pages and everything. That is all, I mean, it might not be, we try to update it as often as we can, as often as we get finalized information. But all of that is up on my website, yaronbrookshow.com. So try it out, check it out. And don't forget, support the show on Patreon and on PayPal. Some of you still do Subscribestar. And here, right here, on the Super Chat, right here, we're still short about $150 to our 2-hour goal, $140 to a 2-hour goal, maybe a little less because David came in with another question. All right, Liam. Trump is wasting his entire political capital on a trade war. Once the economy tanks, is he not on the verge of losing in the midterms? Won't he need to dial back the crazy? Well, it depends what he wants. I mean, people continue to assume that he's some kind of rational actor. I don't know what he wants. And remember, you can't, and I told you this before the election. I told you this a year ago, more than a year ago. In the first term, Trump had adults in the room with him who talked him out of his crazy. There's no adults in the room right now. None. Zero zilch. That's the basis on which he appointed them. If you're an adult, you couldn't get an appointment. You couldn't get into the Trump administration. So I don't know what drives him not to be crazy. He loses the midterm, so why does he care? Why does he care? He can still attack Ukraine. He can still do this. He can still do tariffs. He can still play around. He can still piss people off. He can still get attention. So, I mean, maybe he cares about legacy, but he's got himself believing that his legacy is this long-term revival of America, that after this massive decline, there'll be a massive rise. All of that is fantasy. He lives in a fantasy world. Why would we believe that, you know, somehow that fantasy world is going to lead him towards less crazy? I just don't see it happening. Michael, do you expect the market to make a turn around this summer? I do not make market predictions. I have no idea. I don't know. If I knew stuff like that, I would be so rich, I would not be asking you for money. I would be answering your questions for free. I'd still do the show because I enjoy it, but I would not be asking for money. I'd shut down Patreon. If I could time the market, I'd be richer than Warren Buffett. But I can't. I never have been able to. I'm always too early or too late, or usually too early. I do not know when the market turns around. A lot of it depends on what Trump does or doesn't do. And I don't know how to predict Trump other than kind of the big predictions that I made and have so far all been proven true. But I don't know. I mean, the market turned around today. Didn't it go up today? It was up today. I have no idea where it goes from here, how far it goes from here, and what the timeline is going to be. I don't buy dips. I don't play the market. I don't try to estimate when it's going to go up or down. Maybe I should, because I knew what Trump was going to do. But I don't. I buy my diversified stocks and I sit on them and wait, right? When I had a hedge fund, I try to make those kind of predictions, but not with my own money. It's not what I do. Hedge fund is a full-time job doing that. My partners did that, not me. Sometimes they'll go up, sometimes they'll go down. Over the long run, stock markets tend to go up. But sometimes the long run could be very long, right? In the Great Depression, it took a long time to recover from the losses of 29, 30. In the dot-com bubble, the NASDAQ went down 80% and then didn't recover for, 12, 13 years. So it can take a long time. But I don't know when exactly. No idea. And again, it depends what Trump does. Harper, if the Republicans won't get rid of the tariffs, don't they at least have to give us major tax cuts to offset them? Well, but they're not going to. We know exactly what they're going to do. So far, they're not cutting any taxes. They're just doing a continued resolution. Their plan is to maintain the tax cuts that Trump passed in 2017 that are supposed to expire next year. So our taxes won't rise. That's one thing. Second, they're going to eliminate taxes on tips, on Social Security benefits, and on overtime pay. If you benefit from any of those, your taxes will be cut. Other than that, there's some talk about cutting the corporate tax even more to compensate American businesses for the tax, but I don't know if that'll pass. I mean, that'd be great. I believe in a corporate tax of 0, but I don't know if it'll pass. I just don't see it. And it's not clear. I mean, they're committed to offsetting anything. Clark Young, is inflation coming down because of DOGE? No. Inflation is coming down because the economy's slowing. So demand is down. Inflation is coming down because consumer sentiment is down. So people are, I think, holding back cash and holding back spending. Inflation is coming down because monetary policy has been tightening over the last few years. It has nothing to do with anything except maybe, tariffs and people expecting a recession and therefore getting worried and not spending. But other than that, it has nothing to do with what Trump has done or DOGE has done. So no. And DOGE hasn't done anything of significance. It's so small, it doesn't affect anything right now. Ryan, and by the way, inflation, everybody hailed the inflation number, but it was like on an annualized basis, 3.1, still above 3. Fed's goal is 2, so it's still 50% above the goal. That's not good. It's just better than what they were expecting. They were expecting 3.2. Ryan, if there was ever a time to promote education reform, this must be it. The amount of general public ignorance, the basic facts of reality is stunning. Any updates on school choice in U.S. states? Yeah, I mean, there's a growing number of states that have various forms of school choice. Some of them good, some of them not so good. But I haven't seen what I was hoping, which would be a huge boost to the number and affordability of private schools. That's the real test. The real test is, are kids leaving public schools and going to private schools? That's the question. And so far, that happened after COVID. But I haven't seen that continue as a response to school choice. Because if school choice just gives us the status quo, if private entrepreneurs don't take advantage of it by starting new schools and trying to drive tuition down and marketing to parents and getting parents to shift their kids to those schools, then school choice will do nothing. And if parents don't care about the kids' education, then they're not motivated to move their kids. So I don't just want to see school choice being adopted by states. I want to see it actually working, i.e., private schools flourishing, booming, with new attendees, with new signups, and public schools declining because kids are all leaving. That's what you want to see. Neo, can Trump's America Made be possible if all regulations were gone? No, because why would we make everything in America when it's clearly cheaper, easier to make it overseas? So, I mean, if all regulations were gone, the only determinants of where stuff was made would be cost, quality, but it would be all economics. And economics drives towards comparative advantage and towards division of labor. And economics does not drive local. Local is an anti-economics concept. Economics drives towards most cost effective. And that would mean zero tariffs, and making the place, doing it with regulations means zero tariffs, and that would make everything in the best place possible to make it. And that's not necessarily in the United States. For example, Trump got upset about electricity. Well, Canada, because it has these big rivers and can build hydroelectric dams really easily, it has more electric capacity than it can use. It makes sense for it to sell it to America, and you don't have to build dams in America as a consequence, or as many dams. The same might be true in economies of scale in nuclear power plants. If Canada builds a big nuclear power plant, which they have, it produces more electricity than they need, they should sell the excess to the United States. That's completely logical, completely makes sense. It's not like we need to make everything here. It doesn't make any sense to do that. And it's not, we haven't lost jobs. We haven't lost any jobs. There are more jobs now in America than ever. Production hasn't moved elsewhere when it has because of regulations. Some. But it's not the only factor. It's far from the only factor. It's one factor. And we should get rid of regulations and see what happens. Kindred Amy, happy birthday, Jennifer. Hope it's best day ever. That's nice. Very nice. All right, Brian, what do you say to but they use slave labor argument about tariffs for the sake of argument? I assume they actually do. I say, don't buy it. If you know a product is made by slave labor, don't buy it. It's not the government's job to tell you what products to buy and what not, how to define slave labor and how not to define slave labor. You as a consumer, as an alert, aware consumer, should decide certain goods I'm not buying because of who makes them and how they're made. These come from slave labor. I don't want to own stuff that's slave labor. So the responsibility for these kind of decisions is not on the government. It's on you. Now, I know some people don't want to take that responsibility. They want the government just to tell them what to do. But we as individualists want to hold that responsibility. We, for example, might not agree on what is moral and what is not. And you might say, no, I like kind of Cuban communism, so I want to trade with the Cubans. And I might say, no, Cubans are oppressive. It's like slavery. I'm not going to trade with Cuba. Great, you trade with Cubans. I won't trade with Cubans. Keep the government out of my decision with who to trade with and who not. Yeah, we're approaching the end of the second hour, and we're still $112 short of our goal. $112. Ask a question. I've only got 4 questions, so we've got 5 minutes or so left to get to our 2-hour goal. I'm not talking about the 3-hour goal. I'm just talking about the 2-hour goal. Value for value. Come in with stickers, even if it's $2, $1. You can chip away at it that way. We can chip away at it that way. Sometimes we make it all the way to goal just off of small amounts of sticker support. So consider it. Hector, what are your views on dual citizenship? I'm thinking about getting my Mexican citizenship through my father. I don't see any downside to it, and there's certainly upside. More and more countries, as the world becomes more nationalist and xenophobic, more and more countries are going to set up barriers to entry. Europe is talking about requiring Americans to have a visa. Having more citizenship is great, because then you can, if you have I'd love to have EU citizenship, because then I could get into the EU without any problem. So that would be a citizenship I would value a lot. Mexican would be great. You could go in and out of Mexico without any problem. Brazil requires an American visa now. That would be a good one to have. So yeah, I mean, having more than one citizenship, I believe, is a good thing. I'm sure somebody out there is going to call me a globalist as a response to that, but that's okay. All right, Andrew, Rand's letter to a despondent fan. Hell, sorry, but this makes me mad. Individualism won't die unless we let it. If you think the Fountainhead was written as some dirge to a dying era, you don't understand my book at all. Yeah, it's supposed to inspire you to go fight for your own life. Live your life to the fullest. It's not about the past. It's about your future. Friend of Aristotle says he's enjoying the chat today. $20 for that. Thank you, friend of Aristotle. He's enjoying the chat today. What's going on? What are you doing? Maybe it's because I blocked all the jerks and nasty people. There's still a few I need to block, but I think we got rid of most of them. Maybe it's because it's Jennifer's birthday and only the nice people showed up. David, a viewer accused me of asking goofy questions. I'm glad to put a super chat behind my calling him out as an idiot. I don't think your questions are goofy at all. And I like your questions. I like answering them. We sometimes agree, sometimes disagree. But sometimes you try to be provocative and provoke me. That's fine. That's good. I like your questions. This is good. Keep them coming. David is a huge supporter of the show, both in the super chat and also on a regular basis. So, David's one of the good guys. All right, Vikram, talking of culture, I'll be holidaying in the Baltics and Nordic countries this summer. Riga, Tallinn, Helsinki, and Stockholm. Any suggestions for museum, art, and food? Oh, you're not going to my favorite of those. My favorite is Copenhagen. I don't know those cities very well, sadly. I wish I knew them better. Particularly Riga and Tallinn. I've only flown through Riga, spent a night there. I haven't really spent any time there. Tallinn is Estonia, right? I've spent a little bit of time in Tallinn, but I don't know it well. Old cities and all those places are really nice. Helsinki, Stockholm is the one I've spent the most time in, but again, I would definitely in all of them go to art museums. There's a lot of Scandinavian and Baltic art from the 19th century that's quite beautiful and unknown and relatively unknown. They all have really beautiful old towns to walk around in. They all have good classical music venues. Certainly Stockholm does, to go listen to music and enjoy, if you like classical music, and enjoy concerts. And Scandinavian food is really up and coming. Now, I don't have a list off the top of my mind of really good restaurants in those cities, but you just search. One of my sources is if you put 50 best Stockholm restaurants, you'll get it from the 50 best restaurants in the world. They do a list for every city, every major city in the world of the best restaurants. And their lists are very, very good. You can't go wrong with a restaurant listed on their list. So definitely use that. Of course, there's the Michelin is excellent source as well for information about restaurants. So that is a great time. The summer is a great time to be there. They're all pretty cities with great kind of old towns and interesting histories and a lot of, I think, cultural institutions. Jennifer says, why am I giving you money on my birthday? I don't know. Why are you? Thanks for all you do. See you next month. Happy birthday. Look forward to visiting Michigan. Hopefully you and Angela have finalized the logistics so I can buy airplane tickets, which I plan to do today, tomorrow. Esoteric Dichotomy. Hey, Yaron, why don't religions update thoroughly? Toss outdated commandments and texts, release revised editions like how science evolves with time. Because they're not science. What's the basis of the evolution? Like what? I mean, how do you change commandments based on what? Based on reason? Reason's out. It's all faith. Now, they do evolve to some extent, right? Like they ultimately accept a heliocentric view of the universe. They what do you call it? They accept that interest and usury, interest is okay to charge on loans. In the 19th century, they evolved, but very, very, very slowly. And there has to be this huge body of evidence and huge political pressure for them to change. Otherwise, they stick to ancient books because that's the essence of faith, is faith in the truth of things revealed to past prophets, I guess. String a bell. Hello, Yaron. How much for a movie review? I'm thinking of the movie Margin Call. I think movies are 500. I think that's right. TV episodes 250, movies 500. I'm way behind on all my reviews. I feel so guilty around that. I will catch up, but yeah, 500 for a movie review. Margin Call would be appropriate. All right, we're $35 short and out of questions. So we're going to call it a day. I will be back tomorrow at probably 2 o'clock Eastern Time. So I will see you tomorrow. See you all tomorrow. Yeah, the goal is 500. I forgot to change it. Although it should be 750 because we're already a minute into the third hour. But 500 is good. I'll see you tomorrow. What else? Oh, reminder for those of you in the UK, sign up for my seminar. If you need more information and you can't find it online, write to me, yaron@yaronbrookshow.com. But you can find it at yaronbrookshow.com, my website, all the information. Wilmington next week. Wilmington, North Carolina. I'll be giving a talk that's open to the public. Again, information on my website. But email me if you need more. And I think that's it. I think we're good. Don't forget to go to Patreon and sign up for monthly support. Don't forget to go to Patreon and up your monthly support. Rafael just came in with $26, 24 euros. This isn't the best way to phrase it, but what should an objectivist look for in a girl? You should come to my seminar in London. That's a perfect question for my seminar on how to be an egoist in London. You mentioned we can fall in love with a sense of life, even if their philosophy differs. Can you explain what kind of sense of life? Well, a sense of life that matches yours, a sense of life that you respond to. There is no one sense of life we should all, as objectivists, fall for. We all have subtle differences in our sense of lives. We have subtle differences in our own character. That's why we fall in love with different people. We don't all fall in love with the same woman. That would be difficult if that happened, and we could only fall in love with one woman and it was the same woman. That would not be good. So, I mean, what do you want to look for in a girl? You want to look for somebody who is, intelligent, you can talk to. You want to look for somebody who exhibits suddenly the virtues of objectivism, even if she's not an objectivist. So she's generally rational and honest and, in some aspect of her life, productive. So you want to find somebody who's a good person. And then you want to they have to have a certain perspective on life that you find interesting, that excites you, that gets you excited. And it should get you excited emotionally. It should get you excited intellectually, hopefully, because she asks questions, she's engaged, she's responsive to discussion, and it should get you excited sexually. And, part of how you respond sexually is to, attitude towards life and towards sex and towards the fact that she's a woman or a girl and all of that, right? All of that. So the virtues is kind of a starting point. And she doesn't have to know the virtues. She just has to be the kind of person who doesn't lie and thinks, uses her mind. And then on a sense of life level, for some people, sense of humor is really important. For other people, it's less important. But a lot of it has to do with her attitude towards life, towards the world. Is she positive? Is she full of energy? Is she mopey and depressed? I mean, is she nerdy? Is she? And I'm not saying some is good and some is bad. I'm saying, what do you respond to? Part of the mistake objectivist men, I think, make, and objectivist women make, is they're looking for some model of what they're supposed to respond to, but they don't respond. First, introspect into your own mind. What do I respond to? What do I like in a girl? That should be your starting point. And then, if there's certain things that you respond to that you think, that's irrational, then you should work on that and maybe try to cleanse that from your psyche. But first, figure out what you respond to, what you like. Right? And that should be your starting point. And then compare that to what you think is rational. And that should get you a long way. But you can't really replace your own experience, i.e., your own preferences. That is, and you can only discover those through introspection and through experience. This is why go on a date, figure it out. Who do I respond to? Who do I not respond to? Who do I like? Who do I not like? Who do I get sexually excited by? Who do I not? And then once you've tested, in a sense, you've gone at the experience, then really introspect. Okay, why did this girl really appeal to me? Why did I like her? What is it about her that I liked? How can I find the characteristics that I liked in other girls? How do I avoid the things I didn't like in the future? Right? Hopefully that is helpful. But that's the kind of stuff we'll be talking about on the 29th. Okay, Fred Harper, thank you for the sticker. That got us over the 2-hour target. Thank you, Tom. Thank you, Jeffrey. Appreciate it. Let's see if there were other stickers here. Oh, yeah, there was a bunch of them. K-Fax, Mary, John Bales, Alan, and Wes, of course, for $50. So thank you, guys. Thank you all. Thanks all the super chatters. Again, I will see you tomorrow. Have a fantastic rest of your week. Bye, everybody.